Do you know someone in foster care? Have you been in foster care? Do you have a child in foster care? Are you a grandparent or relative caring for a family member? Are you considering becoming a foster parent? Then tune in every Wednesday at 3 p.m. to Fresh Start Today on WNOV 860 AM to engage in thought-provoking conversations with families and providers about child welfare services, both locally and nationally. Together, we can save our children.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Fresh Start Today. I'm your host, Jermaine Reed, and I have in the studio with me Mr. Sean Roby and our engineer, Mr. Keon. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Well, it is a lovely day outside. What is it, about 70-something degrees out there? It's looking really good.
Absolutely.
Feeling real good. A lot going on in the city this week. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic on what every parent should know about bedwetting, soiling, and UTIs or urinary tract infections in children. So it should be a really interesting topic. The first segment will be focusing on a health condition called Encopresis. The second half we will be talking about Enuresis, and we have guests coming in from the Encopresis Treatment Center who are located out in Washington State, and then we also have another call-in guest, an expert who's from the Enuresis Treatment Center, and that's over in Michigan. So it's going to be a very interesting topic. But before then, just want to make a couple announcements on the show. One is if you want to participate in this dialogue or conversation, feel free to call us at 414-444-5250, 414-444-5250. Later in the show, we'll be giving away 2 more tickets to the upcoming Fantasia concert that I'll be giving away tickets, personal tickets. This is not something Fresh Start is doing, but something that I give as appreciation to my listening audience, those individuals I run into on the street who say, hey, Jermaine, I love listening to your show. It's always informative, always learning something, and they appreciate Fresh Start Today. So want to just extend some gratitude to you all. So around 3:45, 3:50, we'll be doing that drawing for 2 tickets to the Fantasia concert on September the 13th with special guests El DeBarge and Raheem Devon. This is Minority Mental Health Month, Minority Mental Health, and God knows we have some mental health issues that we need to reconcile and deal with. There is a lot of things that's going on in our community, and I can almost guarantee you that mental health plays a significant role in some of the outcomes that we are seeing in our community, both with children and adults. So we definitely want to encourage folks who need those mental health services to reach out to clinics like Sebastian Family Practice, to Bracey Psychological Services, to Amani. Is it Amani?
Yeah, Amani, yep.
Imani Counseling Center up here on Capitol Drive, somewhere around 40th and Capitol Drive. You know, and we don't have to fear getting mental health services and counseling. You know, I've seen a lot of people come through our agency when we began back in 2003 as an outpatient mental health clinic, Fresh Start Counseling Center. A number of people have come and benefit from those mental health and behavioral health services. So listen, don't delay. Make the call. You know, there's nothing wrong with getting supportive services, whether it's for AOTA, alcohol and other drug abuse, whether it's for mental health. We just need to get as many supportive services in place, access those services as possible to get us all to a healthier place.
You know, I think just to add to that, because you mentioned individuals who may have some mental health issues and things like that, but I think we have to look at it as a preventative measure as well, because sometimes
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah, because preventative measures definitely help as well.
Okay. Well, you know, I agree with that, Mr. Roby. One of the corporate sponsors of Fresh Start, I mean, this lady is phenomenal. She's done a lot of great work in the community. We have about 5 minutes to talk with Michelle Pitts from the New Pitts Mortuary. Good afternoon, Michelle. How you doing?
I'm great.
Hey, I just want to say thank you for supporting and believing in not just Fresh Start Family Services, but Fresh Start Today, the radio program. Pitts does a lot. You all are not just concerned about burying folk and funeralizing folk, but you all are very interested in promoting the quality of life of individuals. And so I just want to say thank you, because you do a lot. A lot of people don't know what you all do. And you've even sponsored this first 15 minutes of this program. And I know you're busy. I was waiting on you, but I'm glad you made it. This weekend, we're going to be doing a joint collaboration with sponsoring the peace rally. And a lot of folks say, marching doesn't work. That's old, it's antiquated, it's outdated, it's ineffective, and I hear that, but this is not just about marching, but it's also a resource fair component to this peace rally. But we have to start somewhere. And I want to applaud all the other folks in the community who have been marching, walking, and doing a lot of community initiatives to really try to do what they can do to curb violence. This is just what we're trying to do in our own little small place in the world, So I want to say thank you to you and the New Pitts Mortuary for
yes,
your
you're
support.
more than welcome. You're more than welcome.
You see a lot of people come through the funeral home. A lot of people.
Yes.
Have you seen, how long have you been in business?
Oh, God, it's over 20 years.
Over 20 years. It's been a long time.
Have
you seen the shift in terms of the type of clients that are coming through? Do you
Yes.
old versus young? What are you seeing?
They're coming in much younger.
Much younger.
Much younger.
Much younger. And I know we've had some recent deaths of young folks in our community. Last week there was a young Tariq Akbar, a 14-year-old youth, and then just tragically on yesterday evening right here in the city, there's another 13-year-old boy who lost his life to gun violence or to gunshots. I don't know what all the details are around that, but clearly we have an issue that we need to contend with in our community, and it's going to take everybody, all hands on deck, everybody getting involved, getting engaged, politicians, business owners, educators, because violence does not discriminate.
Absolutely.
So, and I know you typically are on the receiving end, or
Yes.
funeral homes are on the receiving end where they are actually taking care of the body or the remains, but why are you on the front end? Why is New Pitts Mortuary committed to working on the front end?
Well, one of the true reasons, and it's kind of funny that you just asked that question, because I even thought to myself, with all of the funeral homes that's here in the city, what is it that Pitts have that makes a difference as opposed to anyone else?
I got you.
And the only answer that I could come up with was the heart that I have. And I have,
And that drives the spirit
yes,
of the
that
work that you do and
drives,
your staff.
yes.
Yes.
And I have been driven like this, believe it or not, ever since I was a child. When I was a child, I used to try and jump in the car with my dad and run to he's a pastor, and I always wanted to go to the hospital and go with him as he would pray for the sick and shut-in. I would always want to do that, always there trying to help in whatever I could do. So I consider myself to be a true servant. And if there's anyone that have not found their purpose, or someone that has, I will truly say that I am one that have found my purpose, and
That's
my
great.
purpose is to serve, and that I am.
And you do a great job of
Thank
serving.
you. Thank
and,
you.
And folk who want to stand with you on this Saturday, July 11th, at 10 a.m., we'll be marching from Dr. King's statue on King Drive in Walnut for 16 blocks to 3275 North Martin Luther King Drive to Dr. King's Elementary School. Once we get there, we'll have an abbreviated program, about 30-40 minutes, and we'll hear presentations from the mayor and also more importantly, from folk whose lives have been directly impacted and touched by violence and crime. And following that, there will be a resource fair and recreational fair for children. So there will be employers, there will be employers, youth recreation program, mental health providers, medical providers. We all will be there converging at 3275.
Yes,
and so
yes.
we're inviting everybody to come out to that. And thank you, New Pitts Mortuary, for everything that you all are doing to make this community a safer place to live in. So thank you, Michelle Pitts,
Yes.
and to your staff. And if someone needed your services, how can they reach you?
Just give the New Pitts Mortuary a call at 414-447-6000, and we're located at 2031 West on Capitol Drive.
All right, Michelle. Well, thanks. We're going to take a brief break, and on the other side of the break, we're going to be talking with the Encopresis Treatment Center out of Shoreline, Washington. That is Nancy Glass Quatrin. And so stay tuned.
Dr. King, Malcolm X, Denmark Vesey, and Father Grappi rallied our people to fight the injustice, violence, and evil from outside of our community. Now we need 21st century peace ambassadors to rally us on resisting the senseless violence and evil that's happening within our community. Did you know that according to the CDC, homicide is the leading cause of death of black males between the ages of 15 and 34? Meaning, by the time many of our sons enter 2nd and 3rd grade, they have reached middle age. What will it take to reduce violence? Quality parenting and moral citizens standing together. We are inviting every person whose lives have ever been touched by violence to stand together at the Victory Over Violence Peace Rally on July 11th at 10 a.m. The rally will host a resource fair and a 1-mile march from Dr. King's statue on Walnut and King Drive to MLK Elementary School. Free vendor tables available. For more information, call 414-333-3372. That's 414-333-3372.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Fresh Start Today. I'm your host, Jermaine, and we have in the studio with us Mr. Sean Roby, and on the phone line from the Encopresis Treatment Center in Shoreline, Washington, we have Nancy Glass-Quatron. Good afternoon, Nancy. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Nancy, I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be a part of this program to discuss a very important topic, one that we don't really like to talk and discuss, but I think there are some health benefits to having this conversation. So again, good afternoon and welcome to Fresh Start Today.
Thank you.
So what is it that you all do over there at the Encopresis Treatment Center? How long have you been in business? Who are some of the clients that you typically see? Give us some information about your program, your agency.
So I'm a nurse, and I was a nurse at Seattle Children's Hospital in the Encopresis Clinic until it closed in 1999. And there was nowhere for these kids to go for treatment at the time of the closure. So my colleague and I decided that we would see whatever kids needed to be seen that would follow us from the clinic after its closure. So we started out by deciding we'd see an occasional patient here and there. Well, an occasional patient became busier and busier, and we we finally had to move to a place that would accommodate practice because we had no place to really see these kids. I was running a small office space, but we needed a clinic. So we moved up to Edmonds, Washington, and we were there from, I think, 2001 until we moved to Shoreline several months ago.
Okay. Now, we're using this term Encopresis Treatment Center, and what is Encopresis?
Encopresis basically means fecal soiling, and the vast majority of children who have encopresis are constipated. A very small percentage have behavioral problems that cause the soiling, but 95% of the kids have severe constipation with a fecal impaction in the rectum. And when the rectum is full of stool, they begin leaking around it, and they start having soiling. The stool is always soft, so people do not understand that they could be constipated because they say, this child's not constipated because he's not having hard stools. What they're having is overflow around a fecal impaction stuck in the rectum. They cannot pass this huge ball of stool, and the rectum is too big to come out the hole. So they have overflow because there's pressure inside the colon if they're eating. There's always stool moving through. But if the stool can't come out, then it comes out any way it can under pressure. And so the soiling that the kids have is usually foul-smelling. It can be pasty. It can be gritty. It can be thick. It can be runny. It can be watery. It can be like a mud flow.
A number of
consistencies. Intermittent.
So let me ask you this. So in terms of the relationship between constipation and encopresis in children, can a child be constipated and still goes to the bathroom? So when you talk about constipation, how do you define constipation?
Constipation means hard stools or difficulty passing stools. Encopresis results when the constipation becomes so severe that the child's unable to pass a fecal ball in the rectum. So it's basically encopresis is constipation that's just become very severe, and it's subtle and often it's missed.
How important is a healthy bathroom or toileting pattern for children's health?
It's very important. You know, parents need to be aware of how often their child goes. If there's soiling in the underpants, that's not normal. And so often they'll see skid marks in the underwear, and they think they're just not wiping well. Okay? Or the child will have toilet clogging stools intermittently, and they make fun of the child for having these huge stools, but that's not normal. Something is wrong if the stool is so hard and so big it clogs the toilet. So soiling that shouldn't be there, toilet clogging stools, or stooling infrequently are all red flags that there's a problem. And stomach aches after eating are one of the signs that we watch for because that's not normal to have stomach aches after eating either. And it's not normal to have a poor appetite, and it's not normal to have pain. So any of those things are flags that there's a problem.
Okay, and so in terms of, I often make a statement or a comment about parents paying attention to their children. Not, pay attention to their eating habits, their sleeping habits, their toiling habits. So how many parents actually sit down with their children or teach their children how to go to the bathroom?
Well,
is there a correct way that children should be going to the bathroom?
Well, toilet training should take place at a time that is developmentally appropriate for the individual child. This might be 2, it might be 2.5, it might be 3.5. Every child's different when they're developmentally ready. But problems with constipation begin if toilet training is too coercive or there's too much pressure on the child to use the potty and they're not ready to do it yet. So holding behavior, holding it back and not going when they're supposed to go is the first trigger for constipation. If the stool sits in the rectum too long, the stool gets hard. Once the stool is hard, it hurts to go. If it hurts to go, the child becomes afraid of passing it, and they hold more. That is the beginning of encopresis, is that simple beginning, just a painful stool, and the child holds, and then they can't go or won't go because they're so fearful it's going to hurt. And many kids say, I can't get the poop out, it's stuck and won't come out.
So let me ask you this, because you said a lot of things there that I think are really important. One is the support or that parents offer to children in developing, I guess, a healthy toileting pattern. But you talked about coercive, when children aren't ready, and some parents have the pressure of teaching their children how to go to the bathroom because of daycare requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
What I would recommend is if the child's showing an interest in using the potty, take them to the potty after every meal, because that's when the activity in the colon is going to be the greatest. It's called the gastrocolic reflex. So you want to take advantage of that gastrocolic reflex. If you have a puppy, you don't wait 2 hours to go from the food dish to the grass. You take the puppy right away. The younger the child, the faster that reflex kicks in. So for example, if you're feeding a baby, they're going to be often pooping right after you feed them, or even during feeding. So that's a fast gastrocolic reflex. The older you are, the slower the reflex kicks in, which is why many adults who have a little bit older have chronic constipation, because their intestine gets more slow and sluggish as you get older. But for teaching toilet training, having a child wanting to learn is a big factor. There's a little window of opportunity before age 3. And if you can get that window of opportunity, if the stools are soft and non-painful and you take the child after every meal, you can get the job done and reward success. You can use a potty chart. You can use M&Ms to reward the child every time they're successful. But prolonged sits are not recommended. If they sit for 5 minutes, they haven't gone, they're off the potty. 5-minute sits are maximum.
You mentioned something in our conversation on yesterday, and I think it fits with not just with the foster care population, but also just from my family experience, let me put it that way. You talked about how that a lot of children are abused as a result of toileting issues.
Yeah, it's a big thing.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. I think that poop accidents drive people crazy. I think it's irritating. There's a certain amount of misconception that when a child has a stool accident, it's done on purpose, or it's done to make somebody mad, or they're just holding it back and not using the toilet. The reality is with encopresis, which is the fecal soiling at times that you don't expect it to happen, is involuntary. The overflow leakage is happening at a time the child has no idea it's happening. They don't know when they have to go. They don't feel the urge to go because the rectum is not functioning well. And the leakage occurs at random times, often after eating a meal, because of the gastrocolic reflex. So a lot of these kids will have accidents after lunch because they're running around outside playing. They've eaten lunch. The intestine's more active. They're exercising, which makes it even harder to hold the stool back. And even if they feel it coming, they can't stop it because the sphincters are pushed open by a big ball of stool inside the body. So the overflow leakage is involuntary. But the kids are blamed for this, and they're ashamed. They're often spanked, and they should never be spanked for anything like this because it's a medical problem.
So it's a medical problem. That's the message that we need to get out to folks, that sometimes when these children are soiling themselves, it's not because it's intentional or they're being defiant. Yep. It's because it's a medical condition that's beyond their control. Because I can remember hearing, and I'm sure folks who are listening to the program, and perhaps they're the parent who have said this, that if you pee on yourself you pee in that bed one more time, I'm going to whoop you. You're too big to be peeing on yourself. You're too big to be using the bathroom on yourself. Yep. So we need to take a different look at what could be the origin or the cause. Is encopresis something that children are born with sometimes? Is it something
No.
that's passed down from one family member to the next family member?
No, it's not hereditary, but the conditions that might trigger it can be passed on. So coercive toileting or bad diet or stress in the family all contribute to this problem. If a child is so stressed out they can't relax enough to pass stool when they're supposed to, because stooling is a voluntary process. You sit down, you have to bear down a bit, and you have to relax the muscles to let the poop out. If you're too stressed out to even relax, and many of these kids are, they involuntarily will hold stool because they can't get it out. And then once the stool sits in the rectum and dries out, then you're off to the races with a big hard ball stuck in there ultimately. So the stressors that families have they're transmitted from generation to generation. And child abuse is one of the things that happens with this condition because it drives people nuts. And they don't realize that there's an underlying medical problem that's manageable and fixable. If they knew that, and when I talk to parents, often they weep in my office because they didn't know, and they feel terrible about scolding or punishing or spanking their child. They feel terrible because they realize, oh my God, I missed the boat. I didn't know. But the message here is, if there's a problem that you don't understand, that doesn't seem normal, ask the doctor. Get the answer.
Okay.
Find out if there's a problem. Many times the doctor will say, are the stools soft? And so, yeah, the stools are soft with encopresis. And so they don't automatically go to the next step, which is, how often does your child go? Does he have soiling? What's going on? You have to ask questions if you want to find out if a child has encopresis. Asking, is the stool soft, is not going to get you anywhere, because the stool is always soft with encopresis because it's overflowing around a fecal impaction in the rectum.
Thank you, Nancy. Hey, a question for you. You mentioned exercise. How important is exercise as well as water intake when it comes to encopresis in normal bathroom routine?
Well, if you're dehydrated, the colon will pull water from the stool to maintain your fluid balance. So you want to be well hydrated so you're not having to pull liquid from the stool. Having an adequate water intake is super, super important.
Well,
and so these kids need to have water. Soda pop doesn't count.
Soda pop doesn't.
Water.
Okay, are there certain types of foods or drinks that children eat or consume that could have a negative impact on their toileting?
Yeah, we tell people, I know I'm talking to a cheese state here, but cheese is very constipating. The kids don't need a lot of dairy products either. So depending upon the age, they need just a certain amount of calcium for their calcium needs. You don't need a ton of dairy products to meet those calcium needs. For example, for let's say a child who's birth to 3, you need 500 milligrams of calcium a day. That's 1.5 servings of dairy per day only. The serving size is 8 ounces. For a child who's 4 to 8, you need 800 milligrams per day.
Okay. Now let me ask you something as it relates to something I was reading. Is there a correlation between constipation or impacted rectum and bedwetting?
Absolutely.
Or urinary problems? And what is that from your
Well,
perspective?
the rectum and the bladder are very close to one another, and if the rectum is full of stool, it puts pressure on the adjacent bladder. So often the children will have bedwetting that they've outgrown, apparently, but they'll start wetting the bed again when they get impacted, and it's like, what's going on here? He was dry at night. Or perhaps dryness has never been achieved, and they've always had a fecal impaction. They've always had stool. They've always had constipation that's not been identified. So bedwetting and encopresis, or daytime wetting especially, and encopresis are bed partners. They really go hand in hand. Girls especially will have wetting problems during the day, as well as bedwetting, and have constipation as a hidden factor.
Okay. Well,
they may not have soiling. The girls may not have soiling, but they have constipation. And we do the X-ray, and the X-ray is really the only true way of finding out what's going on in that rectum. So if they haven't had an X-ray and in the workup, they haven't been properly identified as yet. So all these kids that are soiling need to have a flat plate X-ray of the abdomen to identify the severity of the constipation. That's really, really important.
Well, you know what, Nancy, I do appreciate you calling. I have one last question, then I'm going to kind of shift the conversation to focus specifically on Enuresis, and I have a guest online that's holding, Gail Nixon from the Enuresis Treatment Center located in Michigan. But the question that I have for you is because you kind of talked about stress and its impact on children's toileting patterns. So if I'm hearing you correctly, particularly children who are living in homes where there's a lot of violence and trauma and abuse and homicide and all of these other, type of dysfunctional behaviors, if you will, how can a parent figure out whether or not the encopresis is related to trauma, if it's trauma-based, if it's something that's, or some other type of influence?
Yeah, well, just knowing what's going on in the child's life will trigger an awareness that there might be stress factors causing a problem. But the child who is soiling, 95% are constipated.
Okay.
That's important to know. 95% of the children who have soiling problems are constipated no matter what the cause. Stress is one of the causes, but it doesn't cause soiling. It's the cause of the constipation that causes the soiling.
Okay.
So the thinking that stress is the problem here, making the kids soil, it's inaccurate.
Okay.
In order for them to have soiling, 95% of the kids have a fecal impaction and leak around a fecal impaction.
Well, thanks a lot. I know this was a big topic, and we kind of condensed it to 15, 20 minutes, but I'd love to have you back on the show so that we can really kind of walk through this whole issue around encopresis, because there's a number, about 4 million or 4% of the child population under 10, is that correct?
Yeah.
Who suffer and live with encopresis. Well, thanks a lot, Nancy, for being on the show today, and we'll be in contact.
Thank you, Jermaine.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Good afternoon. This is Fresh Start Today, and on the line we have with us Gail Nixon from the Enuresis Treatment Center. Good afternoon, Gail.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Gail, thanks a lot for calling in on the show. You all do some very unique work over there at the Enuresis Treatment Center around bedwetting, and so I want to kind of talk about your program and your specialized service. So can you tell us what is it that you do over there at the Enuresis Treatment Center?
Number one aim is ending bedwetting.
Okay, ending bedwetting.
That is our entire focus. And yet, if I may add to that, it's about ending bedwetting, but we have to get to the source of the condition, and that is a sleep disorder. So for us, that is our primary focus, is changing a pattern of sleep that's not healthy. Otherwise, the bedwetting would not be happening. But as a result of changing the sleep pattern, the bedwetting is permanently resolved.
Okay, changing. So you're talking about that that in 90, did you say 95% or 99% of the cases of bedwetting that it is related to a sleep disorder?
I'd say 100%.
100%. Now,
yes.
Can you tell us how confident? I mean, how did you reach that position?
Well, it was 40 years ago when my mother was researching how to end bedwetting, and it was for me. I became the first patient and the guinea pig, if you will. And my mother had discovered a study, by Dr. Roger Broughton, a foremost sleep researcher. And he had studied a number of people who wet the bed and determined that that was the causal factor. They all slept the same way. So my mother, in discovering this information, this was the breakthrough for her to develop our treatment program. Because prior to that, we were going about things all the wrong way. They were suggestions by physicians, which, because this is not a medical treatment, there is no medical approach. Or rather, I should say, this is not a medical condition. There's no physiological nature here. And therefore, there is no medical approach. There is not a medical treatment that will effectively end bedwetting. So it is based, our whole philosophy is based on the study by Dr. Broughton, and that's how we were able to treat the bedwetting, to end my bedwetting, and to be so for 40 years now.
But Gail, let me ask you this, and I think that's really great and very convincing, but when you mentioned something so important, you said that it's not a medical condition. And so, I mean, we see a lot of children who come into foster care. I have one in my home right now, and one just left last week, who had some chronic bedwetting issues going on. And so there's medications like desmopressin and whatever. So is the medical community missing this, and why are they missing this if you're saying that 100% of the time kids who have, I guess, chronic bedwetting, or is it just all bedwetting is related to a sleep disorder?
All of it. And physicians, as far as we know, because we've done our best to educate them, do not have enuresis in their course of study. Because it isn't a medical condition, of course it wouldn't be in their course of study. So they don't understand the source, the core issue here. The causal factor, again, Jermaine, is an inherited gene, which is causing too deep a sleep, which ends up with the bedwetting. In fact, it's more than bedwetting. Some people might manifest their sleep disorder in other ways, like sleep apnea, sleepwalking, sleep talking, insomnia, excessive snoring, tooth grinding, you name it. And it just happens that bedwetting is the only treatable of the symptoms, which is fortunate because to have bedwetting, it's not an easy condition with which to live.
So what do you say to parents who have children who are bedwetting, whether it's once a month incident or whether this is something that's happened nightly, and they say things like, you're just lazy, you're not getting up, go to the bathroom. What do you have to say to that? I'd
say that's it's an uninformed point of view. It's an unfortunate action to take. And, of course, that would seem logical. You know, it doesn't make sense to anybody why someone would be emptying their bladder in the night when normally we do not. And yet there is nothing that someone with bedwetting can do to control it. There is nothing. They're sleeping very, very deeply. And the brain and the bladder, which would ordinarily be connecting in a normal pattern of sleep, are now unable to connect, which is what leads to the bedwetting. So there is nothing that anyone can do. I can't say that enough times. There is no punishment that's required, no
what about rewards?
Psychological rewards or punishment will not work.
Is ineffective.
Again, it might sound exciting to receive a reward. Of course somebody would want a reward for not wetting the bed, but it's actually going to be detrimental. Because if there is a dry night here and there, then to reward them is a good feeling, but certainly when they do wet the bed, it's not a good feeling, and then they're left feeling defeated. It actually compounds any psychological fallout. It would affect one's self-esteem, of course.
And socially speaking, how does bedwetting or enuresis, and can you define for the audience what is enuresis?
Enuresis is bedwetting, period.
And, but does it have to be bedwetting, or can it be wetting yourself, in the car, or is it strictly related to, because it's a sleep disorder, I assume is attached to sleeping or to a bed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody who's just emptying during the day, like wetting themselves while napping, wetting themselves while in the car, I think you said, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. That's not related to the sleep pattern, so that's not something that we consider a detrimental condition, and yet it's certainly not fun. It can be embarrassing for people, especially youngsters, to do something like that. Yet we also treat that not in terms of a sleep disorder, but we treat that because we see often that because people are wetting the bed at night, their lock muscle, which is at the base of the bladder, is not working properly. It's not being asked to be utilized, and therefore, like any muscle in the body, it begins to weaken. So we do see a lot of daytime accidents, but that really is just a symptom of the bedwetting itself. Bedwetting is a symptom of a sleep disorder, and having accidents during the day or even having to rush to the bathroom, these things are symptoms of the bedwetting.
Now, which realm of sleep, when you talk about that very deep sleep, which realm of sleep are you referring to?
Well, it's actually that somebody who wets the bed does not enter the sleep stages as one with a normal pattern would. So in a normal pattern, one would gradually descend or drop into their sleep stages. And there are 4 primary stages. Mm-hmm. And then they come up to what's called rapid eye movement, which we know as REM sleep, where dreaming takes place. Mm-hmm. And then we cycle through the remaining stages once again. That's the normal pattern. That's what allows us to sleep through the night, feel refreshed in the morning, our brain gets cleansed and revitalized, energy stores are replenished. It's a good quality sleep. Yet for somebody who has this gene, who actually has and suffers really from enuresis, they don't enter their sleep the same way. They actually drop pretty quickly. And parents of bedwetters can attest to this fact that they drop pretty quickly, like dropping a rock into the ocean. To the bottom floor they go. And that's where they remain almost all night long. And therefore, their brain and bladder aren't connecting. They're not coming up to rapid eye movement sleep consistently. They're not cycling through their stages as designed, and we know that's happening because the bedwetting is taking place. It's a surefire sign that something's not quite right with the sleep.
Okay, so because one thing we like to do when we try to educate the community and providers when we're talking about some tips, we always say, hey, cut the liquids off at a particular hour prior to bedtime. Allow the child to
and we're going to get to the tips in terms of what can folks do to kind of help manage what is effective and what we should not be doing. We're going to get to that, but there's something else I want, because you had talked about a good quality sleep. Gail, you talk about good quality sleep and how important that is. So when children aren't getting good quality sleep at night because they have this disorder, how does poor quality sleep impact school performance?
School performance? Well, it's beyond just school performance. There's a lot of fallout with somebody who has this sleep disorder. You think about it. Sleep is everything to how we function.
Correct.
And I don't know about you, but if I miss a couple of hours of sleep in the night, I can be kind of testy the next day, and people can verify that. I might be quick to react. If you're just not getting good sleep, that's the natural fallout.
So behavioral.
So, behaviorally speaking, that's something that we see regularly. No matter where people live in the world who call upon us, if they're not getting good sleep, no matter the race, the location, the gender, it's going to affect how they function during the day. So we see mood challenges, whether they're easily frustrated, reactive, they tend to be forgetful, they might tend to be anxious. Mm-hmm. These are consistent behavioral challenges that we see. And, as you mentioned, academically speaking, it can certainly pose a challenge, because think about it, if your brain isn't achieving healthy sleep, right, you're tired, you have trouble focusing and concentrating, you could be skittish in school.
Right, so with trouble focusing and concentrating, so we see a number of children who are diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and ADD, attention deficit disorder. So something I was reading talking about, there's a lot of misdiagnosing going on where children are being diagnosed with these attention issues when actually is a lack of quality sleep that they're getting.
Allow me to clarify on that point. While you are accurate, there are some children who have legitimately diagnosed learning disabilities. That's one thing.
Okay.
Yet, for the people that we see, I'd say 9 out of 10 times they have a misdiagnosis. Yes, there's a misdiagnosis because if they're not sleeping well, that's not often something that somebody like, let's say, a school psychologist or a teacher would know, that they're having a bedwetting experience, which, of course, is sourced by the poor quality sleep. So the fact that somebody is having trouble focusing and concentrating, they're not looking to this other possible cause. And yes, we do see a lot of misdiagnoses because of the fact that somebody isn't sleeping well. It shows up with ADD or ADHD symptoms, and they're treating it on a surface level.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting, because I was wondering what is that relationship between enuresis and ADHD or ADD, if there was any. And that's
actually no relationship between enuresis and ADD. It's actually the relationship between the poor quality sleep and ADD, which I'd say we see regularly. Once the sleep pattern is changed and made healthy, that those symptoms of ADD and ADHD abate. They go away, or at least they're diminished. To take a child off medication is highly likely if they're being treated with medication for ADD.
Wow. So we've talked about a lot, and let me just say for my listening audience, in 4 minutes, I'm going to do a giveaway for 2 tickets to the Fantasia concert. You can call 414-5250. And one of the conditions of getting those tickets is not just being caller number 10, but you also would need to participate in the Peace Rally scheduled for July 11th, and we can give you those details when you call 414-444-5250. And we're going to go for a commercial in about 2 minutes, and after the commercial, when you hear this Fantasia song, we want you to give us a call. Going back to Gail, you've given a lot of information. So you said that there's a link between ADHD, ADD, and poor quality of sleep.
Yes,
okay,
definitely.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If the cause of bedwetting is due to the brain going to a deep sleep, how can your program help, or program like yours help a child or an adult? Because I found out that there's a lot of adults who are still wetting the bed, or they have an encopresis, or not encopresis, but enuresis.
Yes.
Okay.
A high number of adults wet the bed, by the way.
So how many adults are
very
using the
clear.
bathroom on themselves because of this condition?
Say it again. I apologize.
How many adults approximately are using the bathroom at night while they're in the bed?
I can't say for sure because a lot of adults don't report their condition. They're not sharing with their physicians. They're embarrassed, and this is a sensitive issue. So we don't know really how many adults, or even a percentage of how many adults in the world wet the bed. I will say that we see a number of patients. We have a number of adults. Currently, the oldest one is 44, and he's been in our program for 2.5 years, which is typical for an adult. The older one gets with this sleep disorder, the longer it takes to treat the condition, to change the pattern of sleep. So because adults have a sensitive and rather embarrassing condition, they often lead very solitary lives. And that means they just don't want to share it with another individual, and they end up just feeling alone and being alone, living alone.
And for
most of their
children,
life.
and for children as well, from a social standpoint, the other children tease them, or they don't go over for sleepovers, and parts because of the bedwetting issue.
Yes, in fact, Jermaine, that is one of the most traumatic aspects that we see.
Wow.
Is that children aren't feeling comfortable, in fact, terrified about attending a sleepover, and they're missing out on that social activity, and they feel so different. They have this secret that they feel they have to keep, and they associate it with shame and embarrassment, and really to even think for a moment that they might be discovered by somebody, by a peer, another child, is just terrifying for them. So they don't participate.
I think that's so important that you stated that, because self-esteem is so important to our lifestyles. And if your self-esteem is damaged at a very early age, and that carries out throughout your life, that is very, very impactful. So I think that's so important, so providers can understand that, hey, this is something that, from what you're saying, Gail, this is normal for a lot of people.
Is there reality?
Normal in, yes, their reality, because they experience this every day. And this is a condition that affects the whole family. So a mother or father just wants their child to be happy. And yet this is a constant daily thing. They have to think about this daily, and that alone is stressful. And the amount of laundry that's done, the expensive pull-ups, if those are utilized. These are big issues in a household where you really want to function stress-free, as much as possible. It's a stressful condition.
Now, Gail, someone just asked whether or not this condition is genetic.
Yes.
It is genetic. Okay, so it is genetic.
It's a gene that's inherited.
Okay. On the other side of this break, I really want you to kind of talk about how your program or program like yours can help a child or adult eliminate bedwetting. We're going to take a break right now, but we'll be back with Gail Nixon from the Enuresis Treatment Center.
Do you know what Nelson Mandela, Andrew Jackson, Malcolm X, and Steve Jobs have in common? Each of these individuals were world leaders who were once in foster care. We often hear about the road from foster care to prison, but did you know there's another road from foster care to a world stage? Fresh Start Family Services is looking for adults to become licensed foster parents. Every child needs a caring adult in their lives. Wouldn't it be great if you could foster or adopt the next world leader? For more information on how you can become licensed with Fresh Start, please call 414-351-1100. That is 351-1100.
You're back on air with Jermaine from Fresh Start Today, Sean Roby, and on the line we have Miss Gail Nixon from the Enuresis Treatment Center. Caller number 10 should call 414-444-5250 to win those free tickets to the Fantasia concert September the 13th. So, Gail, how can a program like yours help a person manage or eliminate bedwetting?
Great question, because that's our entire focus is on the sleep pattern to be able to change it. So literally we're changing the brain. We're training the brain to sleep properly and to be able to connect with the bladder, because that connection is missing. The brain-bladder connection is missing in the night. So normally our bladder will begin to fill up. Actually, for anybody, the bladder fills up in the night, even if they've emptied before going to bed. At some point, they enter sleep, the bladder fills back up again, and the process is that there's a signal from the bladder to the brain. It travels up the spine, The brain, once it receives the signal, knows exactly what to do. It's kind of the central hub. It manages all the body functions during the day and at night. So when the signal is received by the brain, it will then connect to the lock muscle. It signals the muscle to lock and hold the urine in the bladder until we either get up to use the bathroom in the night or wait until morning. For somebody who has this deep sleep, this disorder, the signal is sent to the brain, yet the signal is not being received by the brain. Therein lies the challenge. So the brain needs to be trained literally and to create a new neural pathway whereby a new sleep pattern can be established. And once that's in place, the brain will receive the signal from the bladder, and automatically it will connect to the muscle at the base of the bladder, which ends the bedwetting.
So if I walked into your clinic, or I brought my child or one of these children who I care for into your clinic or a clinic like yours tomorrow, what would be the first step, the assessment? And then two, let's step back a little bit. What should parents be looking for? In terms of the signs or symptoms to determine whether or not, I mean, outside of a wet bed. Are there some other things? Because this kid that just came to my home a couple of weeks ago, there was this grinding effect that was going on while he was sleeping. I actually really thought there was a raccoon or something that came in the house and eating some bones because it was so loud. And I said, "What is this?" So he had the Encopresis going on, or the soiling. He had the urination going on a nightly basis, and there was some breathing issues going on. Is there a possibility that this kid has a sleeping disorder? And so, what should we look for as parents?
Yes, again, besides the emptying of the bladder in the night, the bedwetting, we see other symptoms, which include grinding teeth. This is part of the sleep disorder. Not everybody exhibits these symptoms, yet they are also part of it, which we see are often the result of the sleep disorder. Grinding teeth, sleepwalking, sleep talking, excessive snoring, just overall not feeling good in the morning, because you'll see more often than not that somebody, a bedwetter who awakens in the morning, has trouble awakening.
Right,
and they will be very groggy. Do you notice that with your foster child?
Yes, I do. I mean, his attitude is off the. It's like, why are you bothering me?
Yes.
Yeah.
He didn't sleep well.
Right, and very sluggish and slow. Come on, hurry up. Let's get ready. Let's go. And there's nothing you can do to motivate them. So that's interesting. I'll pass that along to some other folks. But can you please share with us, before we conclude this conversation, what are some of the things that parents should not do to manage their child's bedwetting?
Right. Number one, no admonishment.
No admonishing?
They've not done anything wrong. It's outside of their control. So no admonishing. Restricting fluids is not going to work. This is not about dehydration. Like, dehydrate the body, they won't wet the bed. No. It seems logical, yet, again, the urine will be produced whether fluids are restricted or not. It's not the cause of the bedwetting. Also, alarm devices. We see probably 9 out of 10 families who have tried probably more than one device. There's a ton being sold on the internet, and it's unfortunate because we can't train a brain to sleep properly through a device alone. It's not going to happen.
So this fluid restriction is proven to be ineffective.
That's correct.
So regards to whether you say, okay, I'm going to just give them water versus Kool-Aid, carbonated drinks, or caffeinated drinks, that has nothing to do with the bedwetting.
Absolutely nothing.
Okay. So we shouldn't. We should just let a bedwetter drink as much as they want to drink because it's a sleep disorder. They're going to urinate until they go through a program like yours.
Yes, although if you let them drink as much as they want, let's say 8 ounces, 16 ounces before bed, then of course it's going to produce a higher volume of urine. It's not going to cause the bedwetting, but you're certainly going to have a bigger wet on your hands.
Got you. So it won't cause it. It won't stop it. It'll just be a larger volume.
Right.
So what are some other things that folks should not do? Because I rely on pull-ups for this young guy that's come. I gotta have my pull-ups, but what do you think?
Pull-ups, of course, are okay for saving sheets or having to do laundry, that is, or just going to camp or something of that nature where it can catch the urine, and that's okay. Just know that it's not going to change anything about the condition. It's not going to end it. It's simply just a helper.
That's managing, but it's not curing or stopping, eliminating.
No, and it can be a damage to one's self-esteem as well. The older one gets, a 13-year-old wearing pull-ups, that can be kind of a hit to their self-esteem alone. That alone.
There's something about TBI and Pampers or pull-ups.
Yes. And besides which, we're looking at a lot of chemicals. These pull-ups are chemical laden. They do have chemicals in them, and just like anybody, whether they wet the bed or not, if they're wearing pull-ups, they're absorbing chemicals.
Okay. Well, you know what?
One last question. When you talk about we have to train the brain, are there one or two tips that you can share with us? How can providers assist in training the brain?
Providers such as myself?
A caregiver,
Caregivers, foster parents?
There's nothing, unfortunately. And that's why my mother developed this whole program, because she was doing what you want to do. What you may be doing is awakening me in the night and trying to condition my brain or condition me to sleep differently. We hear psychologists suggest, why don't you just tell them to visualize not wetting the bed, or tell them to train themselves to not sleep as deeply? I mean, a lot of misinformation is out there. And so there's nothing that a parent alone can do, and that's what we're here for, is to actually guide somebody through treatment, coach them through, and there's specific measures, there's specific guidelines, and things to carry out in the night. So it's not just a quick fix by anybody.
Well, Gail, this time has gone by really fast, and you've given us a lot of great information. Hopefully we can have you all back on the show in the future. And I know this broadcast is heard throughout the world, so hopefully somebody in your area of town who didn't know about you will seek you all out. And then for those who are living in Wisconsin, the Children's Hospital has a urology clinic for children as well as Encopresis. So give them a call at 266-2000. Thanks a lot.
We work with people all over the world, just FYI.
Okay, you help people all over the world, so we can send somebody to your agency, to your.
You don't have to come into the clinic. We work with people by phone. It's effective, just as effective.
Okay, and what is your phone number?
It is 800-379-2331, and our URL is nobedwetting.com.
Okay, so that's for children and adults. Give them a call at 800-379-2331, and that is the Enuresis Treatment Center. Thank you, Gail, and have a great afternoon. And congratulations to Douglas Blackwell on winning your tickets to the Fantasia concert. We'll see you next week.